I find it really interesting that Fela managed to actually have the politics exist below the notes. It's like baked into the structure, into the grammar of the music.
This is A Deeper Listen from listener-powered KEXP. This is the show where we talk with musicians about the thoughts and the experiences that shape their music, and in today's case, other people's music. I'm Roddy Nikpour. There's a new podcast honoring the life and the legacy of the inventor of Afrobeat, and it's fittingly called Fela Kuti, Fear No Man. This is a 12-part series featuring stories and perspectives from people highly influenced by Fela Kuti, his art, and his politics. This includes David Byrne, Brian Eno, Santi Gold, Questlove, Paul McCartney, and so many others. I had a chance to talk with the host of this podcast, someone with a very distinct flavor of storytelling. And I think you know the podcast producer, Jad Abumrad. The Jad Abumrad, I imagine.
Yeah, this is him.
As one of the contributors of the public radio show, Radiolab.
I'm Jad Abumrad. This is Radiolab, WNYC's weekly experiment in documentary sound.
Music has always been a big part of his work on Radiolab, from the sound design of the episodes to the miniseries 27, The Most Perfect Album, in which Jad commissioned musicians to write a song for each of the 27 amendments to the Constitution. Here is a clip from a song about the First Amendment by Cherry Glazer.
I could not understand it without a story in the page.
Jad is also responsible for producing a miniseries on Dolly Parton called Dolly Parton's America.
This is Jad Abumrad from Radiolab and More Perfect. For the last 2 years, I've been following Dolly Parton around the world. Trying to figure out who she is.
You'd be surprised to know who I am.
That's why we're here. We're trying to find out.
I know, but you're never going to find everything out. I'm a mystery to myself.
I'm trying to answer the seemingly simple question, what is Dolly Parton's America?
He calls this series on Fela Kuti a sort of sequel to Dolly Parton's America. Here's Jad.
My previous series was, as you mentioned, Dolly Parton's America, which was really sort of a many-part series about another musician who transcends music, who like breaks all the categories of what you think a musician should be. I had been wanting to do something like that again, almost like a sequel, but I didn't know who to look at. I knew of Fela. I knew him as a musician. I didn't know him really his story. We all live in this kind of atomized attention hellscape where like music has become so devalued. A musician who tries to make a living, can make a wildly popular song on Spotify, and in exchange they get a quarter, if they're lucky, right? So like as a creator, the music is devalued. As consumers, we have so much of it that it's devalued. I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing privilege, but it also devalues what it's actually worth. It's become this kind of cheap commodity that we use to sort of distract and soundtrack our moods. I was yearning for a story that put music back into its proper sort of prominence. Like, this is one of the most sacred art forms that we have, and it can change lives.
They talk of black man power. They talk of black power. I say, water no get enemy.
What is the number one thing people need to know about Fela Kuti to get them interested in this podcast?
Good question. I would say that Fela Kuti is one of the most consequential, controversial musicians of the 20th century, or maybe ever. He is, on the most basic level, he's a Nigerian musician who made music from the late 60s all the way through 1997 when he died. Invented an entirely new form of music called Afrobeat, which was part jazz, part James Brown funk, part big band, dance music, part Yoruba drumming. All of these things kind of mixed together.
Everybody run. Everybody scatter. Some people lost some bread. Someone nearly died. Someone just died. Police they come, army they come. Confusion everywhere.
But really, what is most consequential and interesting about him is that it wasn't just music. The music was rebellion, like in the most literal sense. Like he created this music in order to lead a revolution and he almost toppled the government just with music. No guns, no weapons, but simply by making music that woke people up to the realities of their lives and then turned that revelation into action. Like if you want to know why art matters, why music matters, I think he is one of the best case studies.
It's funny you use the specific phrase, music that matters, because that's what KEXP is all about, where the music matters.
There you go.
All about, right?
Teeing you up. In a world that is on fire, what do we do with art? Like, what can music do? Can it actually change things? Like, really change the world? Let's find out.
Even just from the first few episodes of this podcast, I really started to appreciate those nuances of like, oh, he wasn't just being countercultural to be countercultural. It's like he was targeting a very specific governmental issue in Nigeria and like was actually trying to affect a specific change.
One of the ingredients of a movement, necessary ingredients, is to have a place where you can experience the promise of that movement right here, right now, in the present.
Made me think about a couple things in like modern society, particularly in the 2020 when the death of George Floyd, this idea of like rediscovering what blackness is. It also makes me think of the Shrine a little bit and like the Capitol Hill organized protest, also known as the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone that was in Seattle in 2020. And the idea is similar to the Shrine. Can you talk about this concept of the Shrine as it relates to Fela Kuti's career and how that charged some of his momentum?
Yeah, the Shrine is, I mean, you really cannot understand the movement he made and the effect he had without understanding where it happened. Well, he had a club that initially was called, I believe the Afro Spot, but then as he moved it around, he renamed it to the Shrine. And on one level, it was quite literally a shrine in that he had like an altar in the space where he had a picture of Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, his mother, Fela Kuti, and then also Malcolm X, the third person. But really it was a club, right? It was sort of an partially open air club. It was where he would play when he was really at his peak, I think 4 or 5 nights a week. And he, would get on at 10 a.m. and like play all through the night. What's so interesting about the Shrine is that it became, first of all, when he came back to Nigeria from America, so he traveled to America, became radicalized, went back to Nigeria. And he started a compound, which he called the Calcutta Republic, and then he started the Shrine. And he declared both of them a sovereign nation within Nigeria. So like a country within a country, sort of like the Vatican is not technically of Italy, but it's its own thing.
They speak Latin.
Or I guess so he declared that, which is, it is like the ballsiest thing ever to do right after a civil war, where you had a secessionist movement, tried to leave Nigeria. The Nigerian military blockaded and starved this area of secessionist rebels called Biafra. 1 million people died. Horrible, brutal war. And then Fela comes in not even a year afterwards and declares his compound a sovereign nation. I mean, it's just taunting the government. We interviewed, so many people who'd gone to the Shrine.
Because you actually went to Nigeria for this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Went to the Shrine.
What, do you feel like Fela still protects this street, this place?
Yes. Exactly.
His sense was the ghost of Fela is still there protecting this one block. And as he said that, he nodded towards the end of the block where there were policemen waiting, standing almost like on the other side of an invisible line.
You've done your research. You know that the Shrine and also Fela's compound, the Calcutta Republic, he had kind of declared independent of Nigeria.
We interviewed so many people who went there, danced there, described this sort of palpable sense that inside the Shrine there is one world, and outside there's this sort of brutal dictatorship that was literally like shooting people on the beach. And, you know, if you were caught smoking weed anywhere in Nigeria, it was up to a 10-year prison sentence. But there was open pot smoking at the shrine. So like it was a bubble of freedom within a very repressive regime. And it even exists that way today. Like pot smoking still is a punishable offense in Nigeria and you can get put in jail. But the block in front of the shrine still, people smoke pot openly, and you will see policemen standing at the perimeter, almost like there's an invisible line that they don't want to cross.
So there is recognition by the authorities that it is like an autonomous zone of some kind.
In a way, yeah. I think it's, I don't want to romanticize, the shrine was raided several times, but it does seem to exist on its own rules.
The show begins at 1 a.m. Inside the nearby Calcutta Republic, Fela prepares for it laboriously. From a jar, he spoons up liberal doses, glitter, gooey substance nicknamed Fela Gold, distilled extract of marijuana.
You alluded to like he almost caused the revolution, like a toppling, because Fela Kuti died in 97?
Yeah, 1997, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how did his revolution end? We'll talk about his music legacy in a moment, but like politically, I'm curious about the progress that he affected or almost affected.
From his first hit in 1971 to all the way through, he was extremely popular with young people. He had a commune, hundreds of young people were sort of living there permanently. Around 1975, 6, he starts sort of a political operation called Movement of the People. You know, very quickly they had 20, 30, 40,000 members. You begin to see this youth movement mobilize all around him. They had their publication was reaching 500,000 people, and they were calling out the government. They were doing exposés, doing sort of like opinion pieces. And in 77, I believe, I think that's the right date, he declared that he was going to run for president. Somewhere around there, I mean, all throughout this, he's getting into sort of violent confrontations with the military. They're raiding his house. Often it's under the pretenses that there's pot smoking happening, which of course there was. Right. There was one of Fela's lieutenants, or like one of his boys, gets into a scrap with a policeman about a parking situation. It's a little unclear what happened. The police chase the guy back, and he makes it into the compound before they can get there. Then they come back and say, they demand to give us that guy, to turn him over. Fela refuses because he knows that they basically kill the guy.
Right.
This sort of escalates step by step by step. Suddenly, there are thousands of soldiers coming, and they storm the compound. They surround it. According to a few accounts, Fela then gets up on the top of the building with his saxophone, flanked by 2 of his backup singers, and he plays the song on his sax, "Zombie," down at the soldiers. And that was famously a song that basically called the military mindless automatons.
Yeah, I don't want to downplay that part, because that is his, I would say, you've said in the podcast, his most popular song that kind of got him in a lot of trouble historically was, the song "Zombie."
It was an open fuck you to the military.
Zombie, oh zombie, zombie, oh zombie. Tell him to go straight, na joro jara joro. No break, no jam, no sense, na joro jara joro. Tell him to go kill, na joro jara joro. No break, no jam, no sense, na joro jara joro. Tell him to go quench, na joro jara joro. No break, no jam, no sense, na joro jara joro. Go and kill.
It's hard to overstate what a taboo that song was, what a transgression it was.
Well, you have to listen to the podcast to find out why.
Exactly. And he plays it down at the soldiers. They apparently get enraged, and they start pouring kerosene across the gates, the cars, everything, and they just light it on fire. And they burn his house down. Soldiers apparently storm the compound. There's a lot of horrible sexual violence that happens to a lot of the women inside. His mother was inside the building, and she was thrown out of a window, and she would ultimately die of those wounds. And it really, for him, his mother was his center of gravity, spiritually, but also like politically. She was an incredible political force in Nigeria and on him. And I think when she died, he started to go in a different direction. So it was a real pivotal point where the movement went in a different direction. I mean, he was very political for years afterwards, still making political music, but very gradually he began to turn away from politics. His music became much more somber and heavy and slow. I mean, some people will tell you it's his best stuff, so like it's not a criticism, it's just the music just feels different. And he became much more into some weird cult spiritualisms. He became an AIDS denier at that point. He just kind of went off the rails a little bit. And when he died, he was no longer the most popular musician in Nigeria. And he was no longer the fierce freedom fighter that he used to be. It was a different thing. But what's interesting is that the movement, the political energy of the music didn't die. And what you see is that 26 years after his death, young people, this is exactly during the George Floyd moment here in America. In Nigeria, you had a very similar thing happen called the NSARS protest. And SARS is a particular police unit that was kind of famous for extorting people. And so all of these young people stormed the streets to sort of say enough. And who do they play? They play Fela Kuti. And he becomes the soundtrack of that movement. And this is long after we've forgotten the names of all of those military rulers from the 70s and the 80s. His music is still going round and round.
Them hold me in everywhere with them reach America. Them call the place the United Nations. Yeah, oh, another animal talk. Within United, inside United Nations.
And the NSARS protest, unfortunately, was also put down quite violently. And we tell that story in the series. But I have no doubt that, 26 years from now, or who knows how long, the music will still come around again, Because there is something pure and undiluted in the actual sound, in the musical contraption that he made.
Well, let's talk about the music a little bit, because regardless of the political connotation, Fela Kuti kind of pioneered this Afrobeat sound, right? Two of the big things in his music that were important were kind of this idea of interwoven like lines and melodies. So as one horn is playing one part, another horn is just complementing it so perfectly. And maybe the other thing that I was really interested in was this idea of repetition. In at least one case for like 24 hours, playing the same riff over and over and over, like the same couple of bars. My question for you is like, how was this meditative practice part of his music? And then the other follow-up question is like, and it's kind of a rhetorical question because the answer I think is no, but like, do you think this music would work if those repetitious loops were played on a backing track like a lot of artists do today?
Yeah. If you take what would be a good song, like Army Arrangement. Fela's band was 30 people sometimes, right? Each of them had like a very simple line they were playing. Like the guitarist might be like, and you have three rhythm guitars and one's going, and then the third one's going, like they create this little like, where is the downbeat sort of way with the bass. And then the drums are doing this kind of like skipping thing where it's not really hitting on the one, it's like skipping over the one. And like collectively, it's like these really intricate, like a three-dimensional clock or something, where all the gears are sort of clicking together without friction. What's interesting about the repetition to me all of us here in the West have grown up on like the 3-minute pop song, right? Where it's just like section, verse, chorus, done.
Yeah.
And like often it's just like everybody's playing the same thing. I mean, I love music like that. I was just listening to some early punk this morning, and it's like everyone's like dun 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 dun.
What were you listening to? Can I ask?
Eka Vandal. She's kind of like a neo-punk, hardcore punk, but with also other genres kind of coming in.
There's totally a place for that.
Totally a place for it. But with Fela's music, it's different. He builds these loops really, really slowly, these like interlocking parts. And often what he will do in concert is he'll introduce one instrument at a time. And slowly over like 5-7 minutes, you start to build up this world. And as a listener, you can feel a little bit bored at the beginning. Mm-hmm. You're just like, okay, can we just get some change? Like, please.
Yeah, and to go back to what you were saying earlier about like our contemporary state of music, it's such a commodity. If it doesn't grab your attention in the first 10 seconds, people will just skip it. It's like, well, there's always something else, right?
Yeah. But then what ends up happening when you're like really embedded in one of his songs is like there's a point at which you stop wanting newness. And then you realize at that moment, oh my God, this groove is actually an entire world. You start to hear all the relationships between the different instruments, which are kind of infinite. Usually, and this is sort of middle, late stage Fela, usually like after building the groove for minutes and minutes and minutes, and you're falling into that trance, there will be a moment where he starts to sing. And it always catches you off guard.
Again, we're talking like after like 20, 30 minutes at least, right? Of just the groove.
Yeah.
And then he starts singing.
Then his voice comes, like just drops on you like the voice of God. It just comes out, like he has this big booming voice. It has the effect of just like snapping you awake. And you're like, whoa. And so person after person described this experience of like revelation, of waking up in the middle of a Fela song. Like, I just heard his voice and I was like, my God, where has my mind been?
She go say him equal to man. She go say him get power like man. She go say anything man do himself he do. She go say him equal to man.
It's like a really clever thing he's doing. He moves you into a trance, wakes you up, then into politics, and then you're dancing at that point. And so it's like your body's already in action, and so it's like taking this political message, turning it into movement that then actually makes you want to do something when you leave the shrine. So it's this weird kind of structure that he's created that actually is designed to get people politically engaged. And he talked about his music as like a weapon.
He did that very much by design. It's not just like a post facto, like, oh, I think that's how that worked. It's like he was trying to convey a political message through the hypnotics of the groove.
Yeah, he would talk about it as like the music is not important. It's the structure that allows me to talk to them. And I find that really interesting that you could conceive of music in that way. It gave me a real appreciation that, like, you know, there is political music, and typically what we mean when we say that is that there's music with some lyrics on it that are political. But I always feel about that music that it's a little bit like, and I feel this especially when I hear artists try to make political statements. Even if I share their politics, I feel a little bit like you're speaking in the wrong language in some way. Like you're a musician, like music is your language, and yet these political statements feel like just slapped on at best. And so I find it really interesting that Fela managed to actually have the politics exist below the notes. It's like baked into the structure, into the grammar of the music, which is why it worked the way that it did.
It's funny, you made me think of American Idiot by Green Day, which, it's like a cool song for sure, radio friendly, and it activated youths to be angry in ways.
So what if being American idiot? One nation controlled by the media. Information age of hysteria. It's going out to idiots.
that is doing a very different thing from Fela Kuti's music.
Yeah.
Even though both are political, right, in their own respects.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a nothing against Green Gay. I'm all for people trying to motivate people to see the light, but it's a different category.
Let's talk about the sound a little bit more, just because there are some cities that have their own like Afrobeat orchestras, right, where they'll perform these long grooves and try to do a similar thing in concert that he was doing.
One night free rent, they make you go to court all day for it. One night free rent, for no reason they make you pay for it.
And you mentioned in the podcast, you get interviews from artists like Brian Eno, but like David Byrne especially, talking about the influence of Afrobeat and Fela Kuti on his music, right?
Take a look at these hands. Take a look at these hands. The hand speaks. The hand never got an end.
Where else might people hear Afrobeat without even realizing it in artists they already are listening to? So I mentioned David Byrne, but curious, like, who else?
Yeah.
Because there's dozens, I'm sure, and hundreds.
I mean, you know, great band that plays Afrobeat is Antibalas. They play like some really tight, nasty Afrobeat.
It's the band corporation. It's the band corporation. Started by corporation. Go ask now for unemployment. Go now to politician. Go for help for your family. You fight for that social service. Hey, son, just business. This is the system. But still, the small man believes in the system. So him says to the big man, what can I sing for you?
To my money, Antibalas is one of the best. I mean, I also think if you really want to hear Afrobeat, the Kuti family is still kind of holding it down. You know, like Femi Kuti, who's a massive star, Fela's oldest son, he plays a sort of much more upbeat, frenetic version of Afrobeat from what Fela played, particularly at the end of his life.
Don't spoil Africa. They must be known by the name as the traitors of Africa. Traitors of Africa.
Seun Kuti, Fela's youngest son, his Afrobeat sounds similar to Fela's early stuff. There's a record that Brian Eno actually produced for Seun, which has that really intricate, like, counterpointal relationship between all the instruments. There's some incredible songs on that record.
Run, 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 run. Run, 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 run. Sare, sare, Emma, sare, ho. And you, shika, Emma, saka.
There's also, you know, there's a funny thing in that the term has been a little bit confused because Afro beats, with an S, this whole genre of music that's come out of Nigeria for a while was taking over the world. They named it Afro beats as a way to consciously create a lineage with Fela. But the Kuti camp was like, why are you calling it Afro beats? Because it doesn't sound anything like it. I mean, it sounds like R&B or like hip hop or something.
And you are my African queen, the girl of my dreams. You take me where I never been. You make my heart go ting-a-ling-a-ling.
You hear Afrobeat influences everywhere. David Byrne actually is a really interesting case, just to talk about that for a second. I mean, I'm going to release a bonus episode that's really centered around his story, because we did interview him, and he tells the story of being in the Talking Heads, like when the Talking Heads were like a huge band, they just sort of hit, and feeling miserable because he felt like he was carrying all this weight. He felt like the songs were very angsty. And then he meets Brian Eno, who had just heard his first Fela record, and Brian Eno turns him on to, like, you got to hear this. And it changes him. He was like, oh, this is a whole new way, not of playing, but of just living. And so he shifted his whole approach to playing music, to getting 30 people on stage like Fela, to everybody having a piece of the groove, no one having to carry all the weight. And it became a chance to actually live differently. And I really love how it immediately bridged for him from like music to life.
It's everywhere. I asked that question just to paint that picture of like, this isn't just like one man's story of, you know, his career and it was whatever. It's like, it's one of those stories that I love because Fela Kuti's influence is so widespread and most people don't even realize that it's him, you know, because of him, that they hear something a certain way or I don't know. I love that point you were making about even David Byrne's revelation of like the correlation between music and the way I live my life and how movement is related to that. What are your big takeaways from doing this podcast and learning, not just learning about Fela Kuti, but like, is there any practices you put into your life now as a musician or just like as a human being, like having covered the story?
Yeah, that's a good question. What are my takeaways? This is a generational story that we're telling. You know, we tell the story of obviously a man, but we also tell the story of his mother. So we go back in time. And then we go forward in time past his death, and we tell the story of successive generations taking up his fight. And for me, that generational story became a really important idea to track. The idea that things go round and round, but also the idea that we're constantly in a lineage, that we're never solo operators. We're always moving with the energy of the past and referring that energy into the future. And maybe living our lives 3 or 4 generations into the future. Because one of the questions that hovers over Fela's story is, was he successful? And in his lifetime, no. And even in our lifetime, maybe a little bit. But it could be that 4 or 5 lifetimes from now, the answer is yes. That all those inches that we march will add up. I take from this series that we have to sort of get to a 4 or 5 or 7 generation perspective, where the choices we make, we have to make those choices knowing or hoping, because we'll never know, that in 7 generations, those choices will yield something positive. And it's a different way to live. It removes you from the sense that we are all a kind of main character or hero in our own journey. We're just part of a long succession. And we're holding hands with the next generation, and we have to somehow just do our best to pay it to them in a way that they can use.
That's really beautiful. Thanks for reflecting on that. I also want to emphasize, we said earlier, but it's worth repeating here, is that part of that 6 or 7 generation progress, music is part of it, right? And music was a prime mover in that. And so I think that for anyone who you know is trying to make some change with music and isn't seeing the quote unquote fruit of that labor in their lifetime, there's no saying that it won't have that impact. It's 6 lifetimes later, like you said.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples of musicians who were ignored or disparaged in their lifetimes and then are now moving people, you know, and I think that's ultimately the power of music, is that it will outlive us. You know, I think that's what he meant. That's what Fela meant when he said music is the weapon of the future, his famous quote. I think what he meant is that it's going to outlive the enemies. It will do something beyond us. And I hope he's right.
Usually we conclude our interviews by asking what other artist is inspiring you right now, or really like, what are you listening to? Like, what is something that, you know, obviously we know Fela Kuti's in the mix, but I'm curious, like, what are you listening to, both as an artist, but just as a human being in the world? What's inspiring you?
My music diet is all over the map. I've been listening to a lot of jazz recently because this Fela project actually, as we were telling the story of how he came to be, inevitably you're talking about Miles and all of the, you know, and Clifford Brown and all these people. And I was like, oh, let me put on those records. I haven't heard those in forever. And I was like, oh, dang, these are good. You know? So I was having a little bit of a jazz, like going around that block again. My son, speaking of parenting, my 16-year-old son is like deep into Bill Evans right now. And so he's playing a lot of like Bill Evans tunes, and he sounds like Bill Evans. And so like between him and between Fela, I feel like I'm being sucked back into jazz. I'm also finding a lot of inspiration in, there's a guy named Siavash Amini who is, I guess you would call it, like back in my nerdy sort of music school days, I might have called it electroacoustic. This like very experimental ambient music that's sometimes quite dissonant, but that's made with sounds which seem electronic, but they might be acoustic. You're not sure, or maybe it's acoustic instruments treated electronically. But he creates these kind of sound worlds that are like weather patterns. It's almost like a field and storms moving across a field, and there's no melody, there's nothing to focus on. It's just like big masses of sound, and I really like listening to them. You feel completely lost in them because there's nothing for your ear to really grab to. There's no like hummable moments.
You know, I'd be remiss not to ask about your music, because everyone, I think if they know you as the Radiolab guy, but like, I think you deserve recognition for being a musician as well. So how do people engage with you as a musician?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a musician before anything else. I do a lot of sort of music, art, theater projects, which are extensions of journalism, but they're like in live spaces and very weird and strangely shaped. So I tend to do a lot of different things. One of the great pleasures of making Radiolab for so long was I was writing a lot of the music for the show, sort of sneaking it in. But, you know, how do people engage with me musically? I mean, there's, you know, you can go to my SoundCloud, which has a ton of original music that I've written for films and dance pieces. Piece that I recently worked on, which was for a 60-voice choir and electronics and various other things. It was sort of a look at the Brooklyn Naval Yard, which was sort of the engine of U.S. war making across time. It's now a big, giant abandoned space here in Brooklyn. And myself and another composer, Paola Prestini, and a wonderful director, Jessica Grindstaff, and a bunch of other like video artists, we created this world that was almost conjuring the voices and the histories of the space.
What steel? What steel? 2 million more war stand on. Bones built on. Steel sail on. 2 million more war stand on. Bones built on. Steel sails on. 2 million more war stand on.
Jad, thank you for taking time to talk about Fela Kuti's story, some of your own influences and your own music, and we'd love to hear your voice and love to hear you telling more stories. So thanks for doing all this.
Oh my God, thanks for having me on. It's been such a joy talking with you, so I appreciate it very much.
This has been A Deeper Listen. I hope that you'll leave a review of this podcast, share it with a friend, because those word-of-mouth recommendations really mean a lot in letting people know that you found some value in this podcast. Emily and I and everyone else who's contributed to this show have only ever worked on it to enrich your life. So thank you for listening. Thanks also to Jad Abumrad for being on the show today. Really go listen to Fela Kuti, Fear No Man. It's extremely insightful. I promise you'll get way more out of it than you think you're going to. Also want to thank Janice Headley for web design and Matt Okaz for audio mastering. Very steady parts of the team here. My name is Roddy Nickpour, thanking you once again for taking a deeper listen. Take care out there.